So I'm going to give a presentation about seed production that will cover some of the topics there. And the discussions Lorraine and I had were about, how do you know when it's time to go collect seed? What are some of the methods? And discussion we had today, she mentioned that it might be fun for y'all to see what I just got through doing for the last 30 days. So I put that in there, and that's what we're going to start with. So there I am on the prairie. Let's see if this works. Okay, is my audio good? Okay, let me be sure that I have the chat feature going so I can see that. So feel free to chat a question. If you need me to go back a slide or want to know more about what you're looking at, I'll stop and try and answer most of them in real time. And then I'll give some time at the end to do the same. So this here is the coastal prairies, and you can see a few species of grass in there. And typically around October, we start off traveling the state looking for potential harvest sites. And so this is what that looks like. That's my son, George Fisher, the youngest lifetime member of NPSOT, who was gifted his membership upon his arrival. So you can see he's checking the seeds just like Dad and Granddad there in the background. I'll pause it. So so this is kind of the first step when you're deciding whether or not you're going to conduct a harvest. So there in the background, we're actually looking inside of the little blue stem seeds, trying to find the germplasm in there to see if it's going to be worth conducting a large-scale harvest. And so the large-scale harvest I wanted to show sort of like where our company started with mason jars and hand collections of seeds, and over the years have taken the lessons learned and just scaled them up time and time and time again, and that's kind of where we're at now. So this is a machine we use that in its previous life was for corn and soybeans, and we've repurposed it to run on the prairies. And this attachment on the front end is actually called a stripper header. It's manufactured in England, and it was developed to harvest wheat under conditions where the seeds were moist because of the climate and they would never shatter off the stalks. And so this machine was designed to strip the seeds off the stalks and leave everything else in the field, which works well, especially on sensitive prairies that we're not cutting the habitat down and leaving the little critters exposed to predation and such. So this is how it works. It's 30 feet wide, and the header weighs 10,000 pounds, and the combine weighs 20. So that's a total weight of 30,000 pounds plus fuel and a load of seed. It's a pretty outrageous deal. You can see here in the photograph an area closer to the road that has a whole lot of white fuzzy, and then an area just past that doesn't. So the white fuzzy is where the combine hasn't been, and the darker area in the background is where it has been. And you can see that not everything that was out there was taken into the machine. So in particular, like a group of white fuzzy plants there sort of towards the left side. So it'll only pick up the seeds that are ready as long as you know what you're doing, setting it up to run. And this is how it works. So that drum rotates in this orientation. It would be operating counterclockwise. And so you can see the leading edges of all of those teeth are wore, and they're plastic. So if you think of each one of those fingers as a human finger, you can see the army of people that would be required to harvest seed at this scale. This is just for scale. Fisher likes to help out. And so there's some seed in the hopper, and we got to get it out of the hopper and into the trailer. This is another video just for scale. You can kind of see what we're working with. And that's approximately 500 acres. And that's just a couple days work for that machine. So it's incredible the kind of stuff that you can see while you're out there doing that. You know, hawks and prairie chickens sometimes, but it's not all fun and games. Sometimes things don't quite work out the way that we want them to. And so I had 30 days of stuff like this. But in the end, it's worth it. We bring it home and let quality control have a look at it, see what they think. Okay, so at this stage, the seed material is still moist because of the timing of the harvest. And this is often an issue for us. Dealing with native plants, they're not very cooperative like wheat or anything else. They tend to be humid when we get them, and that's always an issue that if you just sack them up the way they are, they'll rot on you. So over the years, we've configured different ways of doing it. These are drying trailers. The one on the right-hand side is 60 cubic yards. The one on the left is 15. And I think we're going to fill that one on the right up 4 times this year, which is an incredible volume of seed. This is what they look like underneath. So you see the perforated screen allows air to be forced through the material that's in the trailer. And this contraption here in the center is a squirrel cage fan that produces a large volume of air. And fortunately, where we're located in Junction, oftentimes it's really dry air that we have outside. So we can dry this stuff relatively quickly. In the years past, we've had to do stuff like this with that same volume of seed. So that would have to be done twice daily until the seed dried out. You can only imagine how much labor that is. So once it's dry, it comes out of the trailer, and you can see there that it really does look quite clean. But we like to process it further to remove empty seeds and any kind of contaminant that might be in there, and or to separate out the biodiversity to further process it for future reblending back into one of our mixes. So here's a little bit of how we process it. So there's the lightweight seeds coming out of it. This will be your empty seeds. So I'm going to stop here for a sec, and there's a couple questions. Where was this harvest? The video of the combine was at a harvest site just outside of Sealy. Gotta go to notes. Chat back up. So right along the San Bernard River, there's a big patch of blue stem there that we often travel to. This year we also worked in the Lost Pines. There was a couple slides in there, like the one with Fisher and the little combine and the big combine behind him. That was at a prairie remnant there in the Lost Pines ecoregion that we utilize that material to help restore the Bastrop complex. How much seed does 500 acres produce? Well, it depends, a lot on location, climate, rainfall. Some 500 acre tracts at that place would produce half a trailer, and other ones would produce 2, so it kind of just depends. And then someone was asking about how do we get the KR out? Well, we don't put it in there to start. So if there's any kind of inseparable contaminant, we abandon the harvest site, no matter how good the grass looks. So here's another video of a separation that's being made. So this machine that is processing the seeds is separating it using 2 fans, 2 streams of air, one at entry and one at exit, and 4 perforated screens of different sizes that cut different kinds of material off. And so this discharge here is where the heavier grain type seeds are coming out, and the blue stem, the little blue stem that was in the previous, well, it's in the next one, comes out on the air discharge of the machine. I'll show that here in a second. So we can make an initial cut here. You can see the grains of seed coming out. So that's the hard seed component. In this particular batch, there's Western ragweed. We're actually going to keep that. And we have a few applications where it actually would be a desirable plant. Really tough erosion control, wore out soils. And plus it's a really good food source for dove and quail and that kind of thing. So there's another question here. Is there a seed that is more desirable needed than another, blue stem, etc.? So we offer about 170 species in our catalog, and they're all needed. The thing about the blue stem is that you can find it in abundance like this, and it serves as a base for an ecoregion appropriate seed mixture into which we can blend other more rarer seeds. And we do it in such a way as to mimic the historical composition of an intact prairie remnant as best we can. So other places like, we'll find a 50-acre dove hunting field that'll be covered in lemon mint, right? And we'll harvest that. Other places will have, 4 or 5 wildflowers, and we'll harvest that. And sometimes we can separate them and sometimes we can't. And that's why we started doing mixes in the first place. And that's kind of evolved into a, much deeper dive. I don't know if any of y'all were at my last presentation that I gave there at the Nature Center, or Conservation Center now, where I showed how complex the seed mixing stuff can become. So this mixture right here, this particular batch that came off the fields I was showing is less diverse than another batch that we did that would have at a prairie close by that would have about 20 species in it. And so when we process that, we try and keep the separations to a minimum if we can help it. The main thing is to cut off enough of the inert material to make it where it can be handled by mechanical planters. and or people, so that they're actually planting seeds instead of sticks. So here's the clean seed coming out. That's the lightweight seed that's being cut off. So those are empty seed holes. And there's the final product. And that actually has a little bit of split beard in it. So that's the large scale stuff. And, we use that machine with a different header, with a cutter bar for different types of wildflowers that are more determinate species. So I'm going to talk about that now. When you're dealing with native plants, it's like many of them are just like vegetables. So squash or tomatoes, and your cherry tomatoes would be an example of an indeterminate tomato. So you would have ripe tomatoes and blossoms and every stage in between, and those types of crops don't lend themselves well to mechanical harvest. So if I was to harvest, for example, this mealy blue sage here in its current state with a cutter bar and run it through a combine, it would grind up all that green material. And so when you're deciding whether to cut a indeterminate crop and harvest everything, you want to be sure that you've maximized the amount of seed that's going to be in there. So we'll do evaluations and go check, what percentage of these pods have mature seeds in them, or have seeds in them that will mature if we cut them at this stage. Now with smaller harvests of conservancy type plants like this, we've gone so far as to cut the whole plant down at the base and then hang it upside down and let it cure on the vine, so to speak, trying to maximize how much seed can come out of there. But if you're just hand collecting, you want to be sure that you're looking and getting the plant spikes that are going to be of the most benefit without destroying the resource for the wildlife and such. So if you can see my cursor here, this is the stalk that you would strip. See, there's no blooms on it, and you would not touch the rest of these because they'll only have seed available down here at the base, and it'll be green. So sometimes, like on the first blooms on our Amelia Blue Sage here on the farm, instead of cutting them, we'll go in there with hands and hand strip what's ready. So we grow about 3/4 of an acre of Amelia Blue Sage, and we might get 8 or 9 pounds of seed off of it a year. And that's with hand collection and mechanically cutting it. So, and many of the salvias are just like this. So you can see here, this is big red sage, and it's all over the map of what's ready and what's not. So this photo on the right, this is what we call the dough. Okay, so whenever you're checking seeds for maturity, this dough, it looks like you popped a zit or something, is going to be in 3 different stages. So you're going to have milky dough, soft dough, and hard dough. And so if you pop that seed open and it's real milky inside of there, that seed is not going to cure into a viable seed. What you need is soft or hard dough, and typically we want hard dough that cures better and is a later stage of maturity than the soft dough. And so what happens when you harvest these things in the dough stage, oftentimes those seeds will have an exceptionally high dormancy rate, which means that they don't typically want to sprout under ideal conditions. They need some sort of process to break their dormancy. And those are all species specific. And for tips on that, I defer to the experts. Like, doesn't Jill Noakes have a great book about how to propagate native plants or something? We have always in the past done direct sow on stuff. So we'll go out and make a hand collection, try and get a pound of seed, and then we'll go drill it into the ground and take what comes. And I think, we're kind of tired of doing that and would like to learn how to propagate all these things and make them germinate readily in a greenhouse. So we kind of started that project this year. But you want to be, you want to be sure that you're not wasting the resource. You want to pick seeds that aren't viable, and you don't want to waste your time and pick flower structures that don't actually have any seeds in them. So just remember, milky dough, no good. Soft dough, marginal. Hard dough, better. And then you'll have a hard grain. And some plants are so small that you can't even find the dough. And I'll explain how to test those here in a minute. So here's an example. You have your different stages of maturity. On the left, you have seeds that are all the way ripe, and then you have seeds that are ripening, all within the same pod. And then you have, sapsuckers on there too that are going after some of the pods that have milky dough in them, so you got to learn how to share. And again, these are the kinds of plants that mechanical harvesting doesn't work well. Here's another example of a indeterminate species. And some of these asters are very frustrating because the seeds are so tiny. You can't tell what's going on, but also they have a trick, some species, where only the first flush of flowers make viable seed, even though they're being pollinated. So the way you check a tiny aster like this is that you get it between your thumbnails and you squish it as hard as you can, and then you hold your thumb up to the light and see if there's an oil sheen that it was left behind. And if you find that, then you have a viable seed. But again, here, you don't want to go clipping off all that nectar, and you don't want to go, thrashing up all that green stuff. So you got to, get in there with your fingers and pick the stuff that's right. But you don't want to pick it until you checked it. That's the main point, is you got to check it first. And here's one of everybody's favorite. Antelope horn. People are always like, why is antelope horn seed so expensive? It's because you cannot industrially produce this stuff. It takes a lot of work. So here you see, different attempts to capture the seed. So we're going to let these pods pop out. Well, then, for one, somebody had to tie all those bags, and then somebody's going to have to clip them and untie them all, You can see here again, this is an indeterminate type species. You have a flower in the background and a pod cracked open in the front, so you're not going to run a combine over that. Then you got bug issues. Very challenging species to work with. It's real easy to get it to grow. Believe it or not, cold stratification on, this is antelope horn milkweed. Cold stratification, direct sow, it's like 98% germination. It's just, we made a really good stand. So, I mean, this is something you can do if you really want to geek out on it. You can date your deals so you know how long that's been on there. But you're always going to find a variety of pods. So, are they ready or are they not ready? What I found with milkweeds is you kind of develop a feel for it. You go and give them a squeeze. And if it feels like it wants to split open, it's gonna be fine. If it doesn't want to split open, then you should leave it alone. So these, to me, I would probably not pick those. Do you pick them or not? So that's here on our farm. That was the first time I ever tried to grow antelope horn. Worked out pretty good. So do you pick them or not? Well, here I got, what do we do here? 12 400-foot rows, So, I'm talking about this is going to cost me, one guy all day, for a week going through there, picking just the ones that he thinks are the right ones to pick, So just exhaustively labor intensive. And, you never get them all. They always get away from you. So, but see there, so that's a green pod that, a lot of people have heard talk about, harvesting milkweeds. Oh, we got to let them split all the way open and then you'll get the seed, But if you look inside there, you see that color? So there you have this milky green pod, and inside there's the milkweeds, and the floss is still damp, so that makes it real easy to clean at that point. You just hold on to the floss at the base and push up towards the tip, and they all come off, and you're holding the floss in your hand. I recommend rubber gloves, though, if you're going to be messing with that stuff. This is I believe this is a passion fruit. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a foetida, Passiflora foetida. So anyway, there's these types of pods then that you have to deal with these seeds that are meant to go through animals. So I have a question: when do I bag the milkweed pod? As soon as the color starts to change would be when I do it. When it goes from lime green and you start to see brown on it, then you put your bag over it, and you can let it split all the way out at that point. You don't want to do it too early. Another thing that's cool about the bags is it'll keep the aphids off of them and keep those red bugs off of them. I've cracked open green pods where the seeds are white. That's another question from Wilt. So how early in the stage of antelope horns will it produce viable seeds? So I'm assuming he's talking about seed pods. But, as soon as that color starts to change, and we go out and pick them, sometimes you grab a few that are a little too green and they don't split readily open. Well, you let them just sit in the pod, and there's enough latex and nutrients in the pod that they'll eventually cure out. And then they split open and the seeds are white, but as long as they have fill in them, once the air hits them, they'll turn brown. The plant itself, so those photos were probably from June, and those seeds went in the ground on April Fool's Day. So does that answer your question, Will? We stratified them on Valentine's Day and planted them on April Fool's Day, and they made seed pods that June. Yeah. June, July, somewhere in there. Now, it gets hot here in Junction, and we irrigate. So, and then it's, relatively dry at night. So one thing you can run into with the antelope horns in particular is like if you over irrigate them at night, they just rot, So the hot, dry days, so we water them in the morning and then let them dry out in the afternoons, and then they can overnight without getting too, susceptible to fungus and that kind of thing. So moving on, you got, there's all kinds of seeds like this that come with these membranes on them, and they're either in pods or they're berries. So persimmons are like this, and, usually they're meant to run through the digestive tract of an animal. And, if I was desperate, I probably would go picking up scat, if people would pay me a lot of money for persimmon seeds. So we just clean them up the best we can. And I have a few more photos of the process here in a second. So I put this in here. This is Prairie Agellinas, and these, this and foxglove and, a whole host of others will make capsules. So you'll have like 1,000,000 grains of dust inside of a capsule. And how do you know when to pick those capsules? And they're kind of like the milkweed pods that if you let them go too long, they split open and the wind blows and all the seed pours out. You get them too soon and you crack the pod open and it's, a white milky mess. So it's you need to inspect what you're doing. But, typically you just wait for the very tip of the pod to crack open. And that's when it's time to get them. But again, on a plant like Prairie Aglaenis, it's going to be an indeterminate type plant. It's going to have blooms and it's going to have capsules on it at the same time. And one thing I've seen with people who don't know a lot about this stuff is that they'll look at this photo, they see this scenario in the field and they think, oh, well, there's a capsule. I need to get that. It's got seeds in it. Well, that's not a capsule. That's a bud. That thing hadn't even flowered out yet, so you really kind of want to be paying attention to what you're going after. This is cardinal flower lobelia. So this one's really tricky. The habitat on it is on the riverbank, and we've moved. We didn't actually move the plants. We had the Wildflower Center grow us out, like 400 cardinal flower plugs, and we put them in a flood bed up in our pecan bottoms, real rich black dirt, and we flood irrigate it and keep it, pretty much wet. We do this for Texas bluebells too, trying to figure out how we can keep ourselves off the river, I guess. Anyway, on this plant, you can see down on the left, down at the base, those are capsules that are forming, and this one is exceptionally tricky. When do you go in there and take that bloom off there? So this is one that we've had a little bit of success with, just kind of keeping an eye on it and pulsing the irrigation and turning it off and stressing the plant, and then a whole bunch of those will mature all at once. And we can take the stalk off, hang it upside down, let it cure, and the seeds will fall out like dust. And same kind of thing with bluebells. Except bluebells, the pods are big enough that you can clip them individually. These are too small to do that. But we hate to, take a blooming plant like that because stuff is using it, So it's kind of, and you can only imagine, cardinal flower has, I can't remember this. I think the seed test said it had 40 million seeds per pound. Outrageous like that. And it takes quite a few plants to make a pound. But our seed packets are only supposed to have 400 seeds, so I don't know how we do that. I think we cut it with sand or something. All right, so here's some Mormon tea. So that'd be like another berry type seed. And then this is a gypsum weed, is immature. It's a different kind of capsule. And that one you definitely want to let harden off and wear gloves when you pick it. So this is how we do berries. So anything that has like that gelatinous membrane, because it oftentimes if you don't do this and you just dry the seeds, you'll wind up with a weevil issue that somehow they're attracted to the dried fruit on there. So we just rub them against a mesh screen, and it's got to be a pretty heavy duty mesh to hold up to the pressure. And then that's your finished product. And again, these haven't passed through an animal, so they'll likely need some kind of stratification, cold stratification, moist stratification, something to encourage them to germinate. But those are wet, and so what you got to do then is use the sun. The sun is our friend out here in Junction. So you can see, this is a video, I'm fixing to play it. You see we have these tarps laid out with little collections of seed. So you come around here in the summer, and all around the seed barn there on the south side, we have all these 10 by 12 and 16 by 20 and 8 by 10 tarps laid out where we've been hand collecting or collecting with our brush harvester all these indeterminate crops that need to be dried.
See?
So these are perennial wine cups, and I'll show you why we've washed them here in a second. So they've been washed, and now they need to dry in the sun so they don't try and sprout so that we can store them. Because you don't ever want to put up wet seed. You'll be sorry. So that's Beto, and every hour or so he'd go stir those things around, let the ones on the bottom get some sun. And that's just the old window screen there on some sawhorses to let air flow through them. So you can see there on the ground behind him is some Texas cupgrass, and I don't know what the other one is. This is an old video, man. This is like, that golf cart actually caught on fire in the barn when it was being charged and melted it. So you're gonna be sure your seeds are good and dry before you put them up. So those have already been cleaned, washed, dried, and they'll stay out on that screen, 2 days or something, just to be sure that they're dry and rock hard. So, that's kind of like the indeterminate stuff, and these are more determinate species here. Things like an American basket flower or liatris, where they make all their seed at once, and then it's all ready at one time. And many of the later blooming species do this, the ones that are in the fall. And I'm not exactly sure, if I know the exact right answer as to why they've evolved to do this, but I think it's to capitalize on bison migrations and fire events. So someone's asking if I can explain stratification. So basically, there are many different ways to do it. Temperature, moisture, chemicals, and all you're doing is, forcing the seed to break its dormancy. And the reason they call it stratification is because you put it in a stratification media to stratify it. So a strata, so a layer, right? So the way that we do the milkweeds is with a sterile medium like vermiculite or perlite, and then we'll soak the seeds in distilled water in the refrigerator for 24 hours, take them out, rinse them in distilled water, and then blend them into a sterile media with distilled water, and then place those into a container that is airtight in temperatures that are like 35 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 45 days, and then you pull them out and put them directly into hot soil, and they'll and that forces them to immediately germinate. So the soaking takes off a bunch of chemicals that inhibit germination. Milkweeds are like, they call them hydrophilic, so they like repel water, and so you got to soak that stuff off there, and then the cold makes them think they've gone through a cold, wet winter laying out in the dirt, and so they're going to germinate because they know that there's sufficient soil moisture underneath them so that they can sprout and survive. Annuals are totally different. You spit on Indian blanket and it'll sprout, because it is just a completely different organism altogether. So this is American basket flower on the left. You can see the seeds working their way out. That's what you're looking for in terms of ripeness on a determinate plant, where the seeds are beginning to shatter, but they haven't hit the ground yet. This liatris on the right is almost ready, but not quite. You can see like what do they call those? The plant parts that are holding the seeds in are clasped tight. Those will eventually dry out and turn brown, and release those liatris seeds to the wind. And so while you could harvest them at this point, you're going to be dealing with a lot of moisture, so you want to be sure and let those dry out before you put them up. This is what happens when you wait too long. seeds shatter on the ground. So that is, those are black-eyed Susan seeds. And you can see the leaf structures there alongside them. People always ask, when's the best time to plant? Well, this is how Mother Nature does it. What's the best way to plant? This is how Mother Nature does it. But one thing Mother Nature does that humans don't is that, you know, for a patch of black-eyed Susans left to its own devices, it'll probably generate, you know, 500 pounds of seed per acre with the seed count around 3 million, you know, per pound times 500 per acre, okay? When you're planting a seed mix from Native American seed, following the planting instructions, you're, you know, and the seeding rate that we give, you're going to be planting between, you know, 40 to 60 seeds per square foot on a rangeland rate, and around 300 to 400 at a landscaping rate. So nature plants, you know, 100 times more seeds than you will. So, you know, it's not really recommended that you just scatter your seeds to the wind, because you're not scattering near enough. You know, Mother Nature is feeding birds and feeding fungi, feeding rodents and invertebrates and all kinds of other things with all that seed. Okay, so people always ask, is it too late to plant or is it too early to plant? And the answer is always no. So the right time to plant is when it's dry. Look at this soil. Okay, if you're going to try and rake up the ground and incorporate seeds into it to be sure that they don't blow away or go somewhere else, it's impossible to do if it's muddy. And so these are native seeds that, you know, evolved in this ecosystem for millennia, and they know when it's time to sprout and when it's not time to sprout. The thing that gets people is that, oh, I put the seeds out now, and they don't, you know, think about when is it time for those seeds to germinate, you know. So deer resistant mix, yes, there are species in that mix that will still readily germinate and put on rosettes and grow and bloom next spring, but there are also species in there that will lay dormant in the soil and not germinate till August, the next coming August, and then subsequently bloom the second year. You know, so it doesn't really matter when you plant a mixture of seeds. What only matters is that your expectations line up with the reality of the timing, you know. So, you know, a lot of this is, you know, being patient. Lindheimer's silk tassel. So, what's the common name on that one? Silk tassel? It's not like old man's beard, right? So here's the thing. That is likely not a plant that would work well in our production, and I don't know of any local colonies here on our property. You know, our property is a lot larger than just the farm fields, and we'll do hand collections there. But we have like an army of, I guess you'd call them supporters, people who know what they're looking at and will hand gather seeds and trade us so that we can offer those seeds in the conservancy section of our catalog. So we're always encouraging people to do that. And, you know, if Lindheimer's silk tassel is something that the larger public will support, then we'll, you know, keep that going. So, I mean, you know, you can look at our conservancy section and see the plethora of species that are in there. And, you know, not all of those are going to be produced here in our production fields. And so we have collectors we've worked with over the years, and we're always getting new ones, and old ones are leaving us, you know, from time to time. Like Richard Hensley, I think y'all might have seen him in our catalog a time or two. We have some varieties of collections of his that we maintain and keep going. we'll call them like Hensley's Big Red Sage or Hensley's Purple Dahlia or something like that. So, we're always looking for that. And we know that, NPSOT members in particular really peruse our Conservancy section. So if any of y'all are interested in doing that, please follow up with me on down the road. We'll see if we can work something out. So this is kind of what you're looking for production-wise. It's interesting though, so even here, if you look closely at some of these seed heads, you'll see that they're on brown stalks with seeds coming up out of the top of them, but they're out in there is all that green leafy material, So is it time to cut it, or do you wait? If you wait, you're going to lose something. If you don't wait and go cut it now, you're going to lose something too, because all those flowers that have purple on them are going to have white seeds in them that won't mature out. So it's always kind of, a guessing game, but we have to try and perfect the guessing game to make sure that we're doing something that is cost effective enough for our customer base to support. So, that's why you guys pay us the quote unquote big bucks, is to make the hard decisions about when it's time to go get it or not. But if you encountered something like this on one of your collection walks, you would not try and take everything for sure, but look for the plants that the stalks that are desiccated, that have black seed coming out of them, and that way you can maximize your collecting efficiency. So here's the perennial wine cup. So it's also an indeterminate plant, and it grows right on the ground and is just impossible to hand collect. So this is the strategy that we've developed for it, is that we let it grow on this is the same kind of tarp that is used in strawberry production. So it's a very similar method of production of strawberries. And we let it go, and we'll go sweep up the tarp 4 or 5 times a year. But inevitably, you're going to have lots of rocks and dirt, as well as you can see in the photo on the right. That right there is a California burr clover. And so that's something that'll have to be processed out when we're cleaning the seeds. But all these rocks and snail shells and all these other things that are heavier than the wine cups, they'll sink in water. So what we do is we process the seed and cut off all the sticks and the leaves and the burr clover and everything else we can get off of it with air. And then we're left with a mixture of rabbit turds, deer turds, rocks, snail shells, and dirt. And so we wash the seeds to separate all the rest of that stuff out. And then we have to dry those seeds. So here you got a man with a leaf blower trying to shatter the seeds off the plants that are loose. And then we got a truck in the background there with a generator. We'll sweep all this stuff into the valleys and then run a generator and a shop vac and vacuum it all up. Kind of the process that we worked out. Okay, so I'm going to show you what indeterminate looks like in grasses. So here on the left, this is tall grama. This is a cousin of hairy grama. So the white dangling off those eyebrows there is pollen. So the seed head forms, and then the pollen structures come down. So you wouldn't want to pick seeds at that stage. But that's, you're going to start watching it at that point. Turns out that tall grama, that's in September, and we just now harvested it. So that's a long time for it to go after pollination. On the right is little blue stem, which hasn't even begun to flower yet. So those are bloom structures that haven't even opened up to let the pollen out yet. And this is Texas cupgrass. So it's super indeterminate, but these are painted buntings, and what they're in there doing is eating the ripe seeds off those stalks. And so on the same stalk on Texas cupgrass, you're going to have on the upper portions of it, you're going to have blooms with pollen on them, and on the bottom, you're going to have seeds that are ready to shatter off. And somewhere in between, you'll have milky dough, soft dough, and hard dough all on the same stalk. So the way that we deal with that plant is to watch for the birds, and then they kind of tell us, hey, it's time, and then we'll go we have a brush harvester that you can increase or decrease the aggressiveness of the brush that'll, lightly agitate those stalks and then kind of vacuum up the seeds that fall off of them. And so the Texas cupgrass will run the brush harvester over it 12 times a year or something, and gather up all those batches, clean them up, and just guard them all summer long, blend them all together, and then send off a test. And this one, the cupgrass, has two flushes. One, the first flush in spring, and a big flush in fall, and then it's random all summer. And what we'll do sometimes is water them up for a week and let them dry down, go get them a week and a half later, brush them 3 times, and then mow them down to about 10 inches so that they'll start back over. And then after we mow them down to 10 inches, we'll turn the water back on so that we're pulsing water to pulse flushes of seed. But this one would be very difficult to hand collect because you wouldn't really know what you're getting, So it's taken a number of years to kind of get the process down on that species. So what winds up happening is it's a lot of work for 100 pounds of seed an acre or something a year. There's some more little blue stem on the left that is yet to open. You can see, there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 seeds stacked up on top of each other. And I kind of use that. I'll take an average over, 20 plants or something. And what I'm looking for is when there's, 3 to 8 seeds left on each little bloom like that. That's usually when it's at its peak of ripeness. So when it's got 10 on there and hadn't even begun to flower, then it's not time to go. Then you see Indian grass there on the right with pollen all over it. And Indian grass goes a lot faster than little blue. So we usually harvest our Indian grass here, mid to late September, maybe early October. Kind of depends on the weather. And then the blue stem doesn't come off till, late October, November. But the Indian grass will go quick. And from pollen to seed that's ready to take off there, it could be, 2 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks. Kind of depends on the climate. If it turns mild and overcast, it could take 3 weeks. There's brown seed paspalum on the left, Florida paspalum on the right. So in the hill country, one of the most frustrating grasses to work with is vine mesquite, which is a panicum that grows like coastal Bermuda grass. And it'll do the same thing that all these paspalums do. So there the seeds are brown, see, and they look like they're good, but you squeeze them and they're soft and empty. And a lot of times the paspalums just do not make good quality seed. But I want y'all to notice the black marks on my fingers there. That's from trying to strip seed off the blooms. And that black is pollen. And if you ever get that on your hand, whatever you're stripping off there is not ready to come off. And our biggest clues around here, we get from the wildlife, so painted buntings on the Texas cupgrass. lesser goldfinches on the sunflowers. You know, they'll tell you when the seeds are out there. Harvester ants, you know, we are fortunate we have horned toads and uh, roadrunners, and it's all because of these harvester ants. So we have copious volumes of harvester ant mounds, particularly surrounding our farm fields. So pretty much every crop has a harvester ant mound on one side of it, if not out in the middle of it. So you can just watch these, and if they're carrying seeds off of the crop that you're in question about, then it's a no-brainer. They're ready to come off, or some of them are. So Wilt says Indian grass seed doesn't seem to easily strip off the plant until late October. I would assume, Wilt, that that's climate related. You know, you guys are a little more tropical down there at Boerne. You know, we just came off the coast, and there was still green Indian grass.
Is it more viable when it easily strips off, or is it viable even before that?
It's viable even before that, and you can get into a lot of trouble with grasses, especially, about it easily stripping off. Okay, so you wait and you wait and you wait, and most of the good seed will shatter off, and then what's left on the plant is actually so lightweight and empty that there's no germ in the seed. There's no grain inside of it. So what you want to do on those Indian grass seeds, big blue stem, little blue stem, let me see here. Where are you at, computer? I gotta get my pointer out. So right at the base, right here, on all these seeds, when you strip them off, you squeeze there on either side with your two fingers, and there'll be if it's good, there's a grain that'll pop out this way. Okay, it'll look like a bead of glass, an oblong bead of glass. And so that's what I do when I'm checking prairie grass seed, is that I'm going to pinch right here on either side of that seed and see if anything will come out. And oftentimes when you wait too late in the season on grass, all the good stuff's already shattered off. And what you're left with is empty hulls.
Thank you.
Okay, so then how to store seeds? Well, you know, once they're dry, then you just want to put them in a stable environment. So this is our seed bank. That's the thermostat in there. And you see we got, 4 inches of foam, so that'd be just like inside your house. And then breathable bags, right? So a long time ago, we talked to a seed lab about this, and what they told us is, for every degree centigrade and percent humidity that you lower the environment, so you go from 30 Celsius to 29, and you go from 50% relative humidity to 49% relative humidity. For each step that you do like that, you double the shelf life of the seed. So, the colder and drier it is, the longer that they're going to last. But what we found over the years is that in this environment, 72 degrees, roughly 50% humidity, much like what you'd find inside your house, native seeds, store in excess of 10 years, and oftentimes we'll sell out of the lot before we see any degradation. And we're pretty stingy with seeds, so we'll sit on them for 10 years or more. And another thing about our business is that we test every batch of seed, every lot of seed, every 9 months. And so we can see if there's a decline in the quality of germination. So main thing is just to keep them at a stable temperature and humidity, especially the humidity. So, working with seeds, native seeds, they all have these really unique structures on them. Species have different ones, but they all react to the humidity. So like a perfect example is Texas wintergrass. So, you can watch Texas wintergrass seeds that have hit the ground in the right conditions curl and uncurl with the relative humidity. And what that does is it helps to plant itself. Little blue stem, you can watch the grains work their way out of the hull. as you know, because the hairs on them collect humidity and they close up and then they dry out and close up and dry out and close up. As well, any kind of insects that are on your seeds, high temperature and high humidity is going to encourage all of those eggs to hatch. And so just cool,
Sorry.
cool and stable.
This priest from Southern Catholic taking
and relatively dry, but stable is the main thing. So people ask, can I put them in the fridge? Yes, you can put them in the fridge. Can I put them in the freezer? Yes, you can put them in the freezer. Main thing is that you don't put them in the freezer and then take them out and go put them in the sun and then take them back and put them in the freezer, or take them into the bathroom and have a shower and then go put them outside. You know what I'm saying? You just want to keep them cool and stable. And then as far as planting goes, you can do a whole thing on all the multitudes of ways to plant seeds. But like, I think I got two pictures here and it kind of says it in a nutshell. Okay. What you got to remember is that most wildflowers are disturbance species, and most of the dominant perennials that, their seeds won't germinate unless there's been a disturbance. And so that's the main thing, is the disturbance. And then we talked earlier about just casting your seeds to the wind. So if you look in the background there, you can see that the grass is, 10 inches tall or whatever, and there's just a carpet of vegetation on the ground. So if you just scattered your seeds on top of that, they would just sit on top of that. They're not going to touch the soil. So the main thing is they got to touch the soil. So when we do professional restoration services or whatever, this is the final step in the process when we go drill these seeds in the ground. In this particular instance, they wanted patches of wildflowers up and down the road. It's okay, fine. We can do a little bit of that. So they made a disturbance, and then we came and put the seeds in. And this is what the appropriate planting depth looks like. So that's that machine is designed to install seeds at 3/8 of an inch in the ground. And if you want, I can show you. That's a bluebonnet. There's some little blue stem. There's a gaillardia. So you just want it right there. And so what happens is when that rain comes, it'll seal that up, and those seeds are lying right there at the surface, ready to go. Sandy soil, you can get away with putting them a little deeper, and clay soils, you can't go any deeper than that. And so basically the seeds need to touch the soil, but they also need an opportunity to have room to grow. They need the sunlight to make them sprout. They need the warmth. They need the room. It's like Ray Wiley Hubbard's got a line in one of his songs about sunlight, water, and elbow room, And so when we're planting seeds, a diverse mixture of stuff, it doesn't really matter what time of year it is. It just matters that the conditions are right. So we've freed the area of all, noxious weeds and set the thing up to sprout new life. That's all I got. So with that, I will give it back to you guys.
Are there any more questions? Lorraine, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have any questions, but thank you, George. That was very interesting and informative.
Okay. Thank y'all for
George,
having
that was awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I could ask a question. George, how do you deal with predators? I saw you had a lot of seed laying around, on tarps, and an owl, a fake owl. How do you deal with that?
Well, usually we just wind up sharing is what we do. So, in the barn, we have several devices that, when you turn the lights off, they emit a very high-pitched noise. It tends to kind of keep a lot of stuff out. And then we have shiny reflective tape that we dangle from the doors that'll blow in the wind to kind of spook stuff out, but over the years we just have to. It's like a tax. You just got to pay the tax. So all kinds of sparrows and little dudes that come in and pick up the thises and that's, and we have ants all over around the barn. So you lay a tarp out and ants get all over it. What works good for those is peppermint oil or orange oil, and you just put a barrier around the tarp, and it stinks so bad they don't want to go anywhere near it. Kind of thing.
George, did you see that last question?
There's 7 new messages. I better scroll down. What is your favorite plant and seeds to collect? That one?
Yes.
Man, I don't know. I think my favorite thing to do is to go harvest unplowed prairies where we're gathering a mixture of stuff. Those kinds of places are very special, and oftentimes the public access is non-existent, and so you wind up being one of the very few people that gets to access that place. And then here you are with all of your equipment and taking the bounty that it has to offer and turning it around and offering it back to others who are wanting to put the world
Is there
back
anything
together.
you want to see more of?
That I want to see more of?
That we should have more of, or in general? What do you think?
Of a given species?
Correct.
Yeah, I think what we should be doing is learning how to live with tall grass and tall flowers. Those species need a place to grow, and everybody wants the short meadow look. Everybody wants the tame version of what our environment is, and that really sucks for the species that need those species, like monarch butterflies and Maximilian sunflower, monarch butterflies and frostweed. How about all the different caterpillars that tall grass is the host for? Where are all the field mice and grasshoppers supposed to go? So I would like to see people begin to engage with the taller species and to find beauty in them and to make them work in their landscape somehow.
Okay. George, thank you so much. And
Okay,
thank you
guys.
for coming out tonight.